Parliament passed the bill that is widely believed to be targeting critical voices online. It proposes a number of punitive measures against people who send malicious information, hate speech, unsolicited information, and sharing information about children without the consent of their parents or guardians. However, Naukola says such laws are outdated given the current technological advances that have widened the free speech spaces in a modern world.
A good law should be blind, but this law is intended is targeting particular people, those who are using social media, journalists, but that is coming because of overstaying in power. General Museveni is never anticipated these kind of developments. That's why we don't have Facebook in Uganda. He never anticipated TikTok. He never anticipated the WhatsApp. So it's a wrong era. It's supposed to be somewhere resting and allow us to enjoy. Things have changed.
Naukola says the law has an element of unconstitutionality since it will stop Ugandans from associating and sharing experiences via social media platforms.
We are not even allowed to associate. We are not allowed to enjoy our free speech. Can I go out there and demonstrate? It is constitutional. Can I be allowed to consult citizens? It is constitutional. But because of bad laws, which are similar to those of apartheid regime in South Africa, Ugandans are barred from enjoying their rights, which is very dangerous. And that is attributed to overstaying in power. Their revolution now is undoing what they came with. The greatest supply of peace and freedom and security can no longer supply anything.
The leader of opposition in Parliament, Mathias Mpuga, says the bill is not in the interest of democracy.
There's no way we can have our cake. We can eat our cake and have it too. We must accept to be criticized. The only call we make out for the people is it should be criticism, but not malice. Okay? And that is legislated.
Moses George, a lawyer representing Human Rights Network for Journalists in Constitution Court, challenging another hostile media law, says if the president assents to the amended bill, he will be among the first people to challenge it in court.
There is even a provision regarding that if you've been convicted under that act, you cannot stand for any political office for a particular period of time. This, in my opinion, is already unconstitutional because the Constitution already lists people who have been convicted of offenses of moral turpitude cannot stand. Now, this provision is trying to go beyond what even the Constitution provides. And by trying to bring a legislation to overturn what court has already decided on, like what are the limitations of free speech, for me, I think it's also unconstitutional.
The bill places a criminal burden on citizens who demand accountability from leaders on social media. It will become a law once President Museveni assents to it.
Well, it's about 11 minutes past 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you so much for keeping it right here at Sunrise at Sea. My name is Priva Elibaz, and the conversation in regards to Twitter Jabs 1 continues right here on our Twitter Jabs 2. And in case you just joined us right now, of course, we were discussing earlier on the fact that Parliament passed the controversial Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022 that was privately moved by Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, who is the Member of Parliament for Kampala Central. And of course, this particular bill imposes tough penalties for cyber crimes. Now, the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 22, of course, sought to amend the Computer Misuse Act of 2011 to enhance provisions on unauthorized access to information or data, to prohibit the sharing of any information relating to a child without authorization from a parent or guardian, to prohibit the sending and sharing of information that promotes hate speech. Now, those are some of the things that were meant to cure what was in the Computer Misuse Act. And joining me at the center of this conversation is a lawyer, Isaac Semakade, and together we're going to be getting a deeper insight on this particular Computer Misuse Amendment Bill, and understand why it's receiving that they're not resenting it per se, but it's receiving some sort of mixed reactions from the public. So joining me at the center of this conversation, like I mentioned earlier on, is none other than Council Isaac Semakadi. Good morning, Council.
Good morning, Priva.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
Well, the first question that I'm going to ask you is that about the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022. What are your 2 cents? What do you think about it?
Well, it's a good indicator of just how well NRM as a party is delivering on its manifesto. Yeah. We shall know them by their acts. That's the Bible. And this is exactly what the NRM was. So many people, most of them now old, majority are dying. They fooled others that this was a group of Democrats, a new breed of leaders. But we can see exactly now, in their most naked form, what they are. They don't love freedom, they don't love democracy, and they don't love development. They are power-hungry maniacs who are ready to kill and maim even their own children and grandchildren, if it permits them to continue stealing and exploiting black people.
Do you believe it's a direct, not assault, but it's a direct attack on people's freedom of expression?
It's not a direct attack, it's much more than that. It's a complete attack on freedom of expression. There's nothing left. Yeah.
Let's talk about the penalties imposed in the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022. We do see that people who are convicted will most likely pay up to 15 million shillings or be in prison for 7 years or both. Do you think that is something that is fair and just?
The problem with academic discussions of such laws is that we fail to communicate to the people at risk exactly what danger is involved. You, for instance, you're talking about long sentences.
Yes.
It would be nice if for the past 30 or 4 minutes or something, you had understood what exactly goes on at Buganda Road Court, because that's the court that was gazetted as the Standards, Utilities and Wildlife Division of the Buganda Road Court, the sole court in the whole country where they try people for computer misuse offenses. The record of that court has never been put under scrutiny. Perhaps in one case, the Stella Nyanzi case, which we did for nearly a year there, and we took to the High Court, and the High Court passed judgment and said what happens at Buganda Road Court in the Standards, Utilities and Wildlife Division is not justice. This is a court of law. And the court established that there's such a high threshold for the state before you try a cyber misuse offense. Everybody is ignoring this. There is jurisprudence, there are court standards, court set standards for sentences which parliamentarians must obey. Uganda is a state party to the African Charter on Human and People's Rights. The African Charter has established an African Court for Human and People's Rights. The African Court has passed judgment in a case called Konate versus Burkina Faso. And the outcome of that decision binds all state parties to the African Charter. Now, in Konate versus Burkina Faso, the African Court has categorically stated that criminal offenses for speech-related offense, criminal sentences, custodial sentences,
Yes.
imprisonment for speech-related offenses is unwelcome unconstitutional, it's degrading, it's inhumane, it's cruel, it's excessive, it's disproportionate. And they have given reasons why. The most important reason being that criminal penalties are likely to be deployed by those who wield power.
In power, yes.
Against those who don't wield power. And that creates an imbalance that makes democracy unworkable. So the solution is, do not target criminal penalties at speech-related misconduct.
Misconduct.
There should be something of an alternative. An apology is always enough. A fine can be enough. But there's no point filling prisons
Oh, yes.
with speech-related offense. I can't imagine, I'm not married, but I can't imagine how much speech-related misconduct happens among married people
Our homes, yes.
in the course of a day. And if we are to permit them to call the police every time they felt slighted, annoyed, ridiculed, demeaned, reviled, as the law says, we will break homes.
Yeah.
And yet the Constitution says protect the home, protect the family as the first and fundamental structure of society.
Unit of society, yes.
So there goes your answer. Uganda is a rebellious, unruly state as long as it continues in the hands of the NRM government.
Let's talk about the aspect of consent. We see that the bill highlights the aspect of consent as a prerequisite for, before you really reveal any information about someone. What's your take on that?
It's a complete joke. It's the end of meme culture.
Oh, yes.
Meme culture will not end. Meme culture is important in growing an audience. This audience then permits a new society, a digital society. Everybody on social media has given consent. All right? Already.
To the tech giants, maybe, to the Facebook and Twitter. And
that's how it works.
yes.
So the authors of this law are either complete dimwits, they are zombies, dinosaurs, who have been living under a rock or who do not know what they are legislating about. The government of Uganda did not create social media infrastructure. Some people may not read, but I guess they know the story of Zuckerberg and how he started his Facebook.
Yes.
As a small,
idea in his dormitory.
yes, as a small sort of album. A talking album for those who consent. And it worked very well in the dormitory. It was extended to the campus for those who consent to share intimate, private moments, anything, for those who consent. And it was pushed to other campuses and then to the rest of the world. And so we've had a digital boom. But states are envious. Uganda is not unique in that regard. All states are envious of what youth have been able to create.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Living digitally, living virtually is irreversible. And any law that thinks it can reverse this trajectory is misguided. There's a great danger, actually, in what we call pushing speech underground. Speech finds where it enjoys freedom. So if open source apps are going to be the target of government regulation, we are going to make dark apps, and we shall really be so vile.
Oh, yeah.
And so those who you seek to protect, you won't have given them any protection. Don't get me wrong. I want to stress that the community standards of all the applicable social media past a certain ethical threshold.
Yes.
Otherwise, we would vote with our own clicks, swipes, and eyeballs. We would reject. People have rejected apps. Instagram has gone down, it's struggling. No? Twitter has won the game. It wasn't always top.
Yeah.
So there is a vote that happens with every click. And that vote is to be taken seriously as self-regulation.
That's it. Well, in your perspective, which group is most likely going to be affected by this bill in case the president assents?
The poor, women especially. That's the record of the Uganda Road Court. I have represented so many people. The most affected at Uganda Road Court have been women. For many reasons. One, this is a society that is already in the physical form very harsh and cruel to them. Now, no one wants to see the example of a free woman.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, these apps are very empowering. Women that we would never platform in physical life are becoming massive influencers. They have massive influence. And that threatens several things. Yeah. The idea of an articulate man has been accepted. The idea of a man with a voice has been accepted for millennia. The idea of a woman with a voice has always been
suppressed one or another, yeah.
Yeah, has always been treated with great suspicion. So I really shudder for the enforcement of this law against women in this country where they are raped, they are tortured on government premises by government officials. I have these accounts. Yeah. You have the latest of Tracy. Yeah.
Let's talk about the Swedo accounts, because they also seek to criminalize people who open those, who hide behind these accounts on social media that don't necessarily reveal their true identity. Do you think they're crossing the line? Are they going far beyond? Or that's actually a good way of spreading approved information from the right sources of people?
You know, there's a story of the boy who cried wolf. He used to follow the elders as they went grazing and doing other work, farming, and he would look for the highest hill, and on the highest hill find the tallest tree and shout to the women on one side of the valley that there's a wolf eating your sheep. You know, come, wolf, wolf. And the whole community would abandon what they're doing to try and save the livestock from the wolf. And there's no wolf, and the boy would laugh and roll in the mud. And he would do this so many times until the community called him Paul, the boy who cries wolf. So when the wolf really turned up, and Paul called, wolf, wolf, everybody just went out continued with their work. And the wolf did massive carnage to the livestock of the community. This is a false flag. We accept that in democracy, we must tolerate certain things.
Tolerate.
And on social media or in the new digital world, we tolerate, our threshold to tolerate must increase because of the very nature of the digital space. It flattens the divide between society massively. It flattens expense. It flattens everything and makes communication instantaneous. You can trend in Nigeria today and have massive conversations, appear on massive televisions in Nigeria, across the world without leaving your home, without leaving your room. Technology makes that. So there's, to be able to enjoy the best of the digital experience, we must have a higher threshold for tolerance. And tolerating bots and what did you call them?
Pseudo accounts and yes.
Pseudo accounts and so on and so forth. That is par for the course. That goes without saying. So this is a non-issue.
You seem to be against all the clauses that have been presented in the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022. What would you rather they focus on curing in the Computer Misuse Act?
The problems with the existing law. Yeah. Without coming at it this way, that it is insufficient in some way, there is some mischief it hasn't dealt with. Of course there is. But with any law that affects speech, we must look at two things. The first one is the controls we are putting on the state.
Yes.
The state's propensity to abuse and misuse a law governing an activity as basic and essential as speech. So we must put checks, brakes, and balances on state power. This current law is such a blunt instrument placed in the hands of every police officer and every complainant, possible complainant, to access the coercive means of the state and visit them against another on such a very low threshold. You won't get guests. I wasn't interested in coming to this show anymore. It will cease. What will be the point? Priests and singers, perhaps. Hymn singers, not even singers, will be the only people that that can fill your studio. Because it will be ultimately Big Brother who is watching. And everything, these will be potential crime scenes. You won't be able to work. They will seal off the studio, conducting an investigation that probably goes back years, months, and so on and so forth. So we call that the harm effect. The second thing you look at is expanding speech, not reducing the range of speech. You should come out a law like this, if you have a parliament that obeys its own court decisions, the decisions of treaty bodies to which Uganda is a state party, it should understand that the constitution in the preamble commands progress, not retrogression, not going backwards. So we must be expanding speech ever. And there's a massive constitutional project to increase legal awareness, constitutional awareness, and introduce a political culture that expands the shade for all those who speak. So I think that there's no problem with law as we know it.
Yes.
And by this I mean the decisions of courts that have tested limits of acceptable speech. There's consensus. In fact, that consensus is summarized in a UN document known as General Comment number 34, I think, on freedom of expression and opinion. Yeah, it is summarized in there. And the limits of state power have been agreed by state bodies and their representatives in the Human Rights Committee. So I don't think those who wrote this law cared for those norms. This is Anita's law because she doesn't like Carolite jokes, because she doesn't like us to discuss the dignity of a black woman today because she doesn't like us to promote image that is acceptable of an African woman today. She's quite a danger. She's toxic. She bleaches. So she's worried of so many things. She's a homewrecker. She's corrupt. That's her whole track record. She was chased out of FDC for being extremely, I think the word they used was musezi. She's a night dancer. She doesn't want all this. She knows this is her law. Her husband was the chairman of the committee. What nuance? I said this on NTV. I told Mr. live. This is not you. This is how Juanita operates. So let's hope that this is like another farting by politicians. We shall be able to extinguish it from our democracy and move on.
Move on. Well, Counsel, in one of your statements, I'm actually going to quote you. You said, we are going to assert and the courts will affirm a constitutional right to annoy without going to jail. This, I guarantee you. Now, of course, you've highlighted this right to annoy as a constitutional right. For the benefit of the people who are watching at home, what is this right? And do you believe that the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill actually affects the right to annoy?
Yes, we have an interpretation by the Supreme Court in the case of Charles Onyangobo and Andrew Mwenda. It was laid, I think it was given to us sometime in February 2004. And it has received international acclaim as the best definition of democracy and the mechanics of free speech in a growing democracy like Uganda. It settled many questions. I'll just settle for three, maybe, that are consistent with the right to annoy. The first is, what does it mean to make a law? What is the primary duty on Parliament when they set upon the lawmaking? That's questions answered. Parliament must make a law to promote democracy. So then what is democracy? It was broken down into three things. Democracy is a political, social culture that is premised on tolerance. Tolerance. Now, tolerance doesn't mean of what pleases you. It means of what offends you, of what shocks you, of what annoys you. This is the Constitution. This is the Constitutional Court. It had gotten it wrong. The Supreme Court made it clear that there is a duty imposed on every person that lives in a democracy to tolerate what offends, what shocks, what disturbs, what annoys, what ridicules.
But Counsel, sorry to cut you short there. Stella Nyanzi, I'll give that example because you seem to have had some sort of representation for her. If we say people should be able to tolerate, what's the maximum length people can go to say, you know, we are going to tolerate this? Because depending on the social media post that she wrote about the president and his son, you could tell that that was not societal.
You're speaking from ignorance. I'll stop you from there. Did the president complain? That was the, you see, you don't like to follow. For you, these events, when people are suffering, you bring values of your home into a democracy. Keep your home-based analysis to yourself. This is a very delicate, important subject. Okay?
It is. I'm trying just for the purpose
so the Stella
of the
Nyanzi
people
case
at home
was
to
solved.
understand.
You are misleading them. You probably did not understand the case right from the beginning. Okay? The case discovered that Grace Akuro, the CID officer, called herself Museveni, and she took offense on behalf of Museveni or anybody or Museveni's family. You look at a charge sheet like Tracy's and you wonder which prosecutor has consented to it, because I can tell you there's no member of the Tumwine family that has entered the police station to complain. Have you seen any? Have you had any? Have you asked the CID director or their spokesperson if there's a complainant from the Tumwine family? They tolerated. They said that, again, it disturbs the president's privacy. Have you heard that the president, in his personal private capacity, is Tracy the president's side chick?
Absolutely not.
So why is she being accused of having access to the president's inner sanctum? Has she shown us the president's penis? Okay? Did she access the president's private inner sanctum and share this with us? Has she told us the size of the president's penis? And it offends him so broadly because he had, in his past life he has written that he has the biggest. Okay? Let us not get lost because we discuss in English. That's also another danger. Violence, or black on black violence, the biggest cause of it is the use of English by those in authority, because they can actually mean absolutely nothing. Like the enforcement of these laws. Prosecutors write a charge sheet in English. But if it were translated in Luganda, everybody would see what a complete pack of bunkum it is. It confuses you, for instance. Okay? So do not confuse law and authority. They are different things. You can have authority and completely be utterly lawless. I don't hear you apologize for misunderstanding the Stella Nyanzi case.
I'm not going to apologize.
She was acquitted.
Yes, I understand she was
and
acquitted.
You continue a moral sanction.
For the benefit of the viewers
you have
who
a
are
duty.
out there.
For those benefit of those viewers, you apologize for picking a wrong example.
Okay, well, Council, moving on, some journalists have expressed concern that the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill will compromise investigative journalism. I'd like to, get your
Ugandan
thoughts on
journalists
that.
can go and hang. I have represented them several times. They do not have principle-driven journalism. That's just it. Like you, for example. You have never read the Stella Nyanzi case. Okay? Journalism is just groceries for you, eating nuts. All right? They can go and hang. The people who are really going to suffer, they don't do any investigative journalism in Uganda. They don't.
Well, Council,
they don't defend principles. They don't. If there was a program by journalists to free this state, to free this environment of laws that affect, we would be very busy. We would be very busy. And probably would be household names, because there's a lot that has been ignored by journalists. You look at them and you wonder whether these are journalists or people dressed like journalists, speaking like journalists. Okay? This is not the first law to threaten investigative journalism. It won't be the last. Yeah.
Okay. Well, because I'm sure many Ugandans have an issue with the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill. Do you think there is any chance that they could actually challenge it constitutionally and actually win?
It's a non-brainer. There's universal consensus. Yeah. There's universal consensus. The Law Society just elected a president, and they gave him absolute mandate. The law is already under challenge by Ugandans. Stop thinking that we are some sort of fishmongers without an education and without an interest in things on land. Okay?
Even as a bill, okay, what I'm trying to pick from this is that even as a bill, do you think maybe like the public outcry would stop the president or prevent the president from actually signing on this bill and maybe come into effect?
The president has his prerogative. We go back to where I began. The president is a gunman. He entered Kampala and captured state power and has refused to leave. He wants to have democratic credentials at 2 minutes to midnight, that's up to him. No one really cares what the president does anymore. Yes. No one does.
Okay, so but do you think, at least as Ugandans, we should be able to challenge this law? We should
Ugandans have already challenged the Computer Misuse Act in 17 petitions, 6 of which are pending judgment. I know of Uganda Law Society versus Attorney General, Constitutional Petition number 1 of 2019. I know of Andrew Karamaji and Robert Shaka, another constitutional petition challenging offensive provisions of this act. I know of Gwanga something. There are just so many, unwanted witness, and so many other people. Okay? Yeah, they've been let down by the Constitutional Court, which never really issues judgment, keeps rehearing these cases. You must understand, we have 70% of Ugandans below the age of 30. They disagree completely with how they are ruled. The problem is they lack leadership.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, Council, is there anything good about this bill? Anything, at least just one clause?
Like I said, it's a non-bill. It is the weird imagination of a Carolite lady who thinks that now they will stop calling me Carolite. They won't. Yeah, we just won't. We will keep saying it.
Okay, let's talk about the right to privacy. Does that in any way change as a result of this computer misuse amendment bill?
Privacy is not absolute. Okay? Privacy is protected in its minimum core, known as the inner sanctum of intimacy. The moment you leave your most private and intimate settings and begin to interact with society or community, you shed off privacy.
Give it up.
All right? You're wearing tight clothes. I can see your body shape. Your body shape is a private thing. But now you've given it to community. You're showing us your ears. You're showing us your knees. So many women who have never had such freedom think you're giving away too much privacy. But you're perfectly happy to do this, aren't you? Yeah. So we must not vulgarize privacy. We must not use a very broad shade to say that, you know what, Ugandans are happiest when they're unseen, unheard, and deprived of the private life to be left alone. You know, privacy means the right to be left alone, but you cannot claim it even in the market. So the digital environment is entered freely by those who sign what we call community standards. And there are enough tips and tricks which you're required to know, to discover, to maintain a modicum of privacy for yourself. But if you like the likes, the shares, the retweets, the comments, if you don't switch off, because you can switch off all this, you can be online in a way that protects your privacy. You don't share location, you don't share friends, you don't put up your children. You will save a lot of your privacy. Okay.
Well, Council, if everyone is to do, as they please, and, everyone is saying what they need to say, where does that leave us as a country, and in terms of, the direction we are taking?
It makes us more democratic. As I was saying, Bo, a democratic society was described by 3 pillars: tolerance, pluralism, and broad-mindedness. I probably discussed tolerance.
Yes.
Catholics must tolerate non-Catholics. Non-Catholics have various views about Catholicism. Has Catholicism died? Has it died?
No.
Has it grown stronger? How has it shown that it's a viable religion? Through tolerance. So pluralism means diversity. Plural.
The two-way. Don't you think that makes tolerance a two-way street?
What do you mean?
Like you should be able to tolerate what the other person is saying, and they should be able to tolerate you as well.
I'm sorry, Priva. You've never understood tolerance. There's a decision written for journalists by journalists of which you don't know. You should have explained this. Tolerance is a burden on those who like the good life to anticipate bad weather. So how are you saying that bad weather should tolerate your desire? Are you getting what I'm trying to understand?
Well,
you must tolerate the idea that it is shining now, but once I step out, it will rain cats and dogs. All right? You have no control over the elements of weather, do you?
Absolutely not.
That's what they're saying. You should have no control over the plurality of speech, the plurality of opinions and multiple shades. As society has multiple pulsations, language is an ever-growing form. The word manna in heaven means food. What does it mean now here in Uganda? All right? You must accept a plurality of meanings. Must accept a plurality of consequences. You cannot choose single meanings in things like words or conduct or figures, expressions that are derived from a society that is pluralistic. We are not a monolith. We are not a clan that lives in a hamlet, you know. No. This is a wide, free society. These are the principles we've signed on to make Uganda a free, democratic society. So it must be understood in its plurality. You cannot make a law to require all people to have a single world outlook, a single view about the speaker, a single description of her body features and her performance. No. Plurality. Right? That's your constitution, your Supreme Court. And lastly, broad-mindedness. If you are narrow-minded, if you're not open-minded, you are not fit for democracy. You're not fit to live in, to enjoy it, to expect its protection. Laws made for a democratic society must protect only those that are ready to be broad-minded. Okay? If you're narrow-minded, if you are dogmatic and ultra in your views, my way on the highway, do not expect protection of constitutional laws. You can get laws that are autocratic. All right? Yeah. Like, for instance, those that expect that at the death of a dignitary, we should all mourn the way they mourned Chairman Mao in China. No. We also know that China has debated massively the legacy of Chairman Mao. They don't even talk about him anymore. All right? Yes. But there were rules on how he should be mourned. There were laws. It's not how society works. All right?
I hear you. So, Council, as we we wrap up, what are your final remarks in regard to the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022?
People should be calm, but people should start to bring meaningful consequences to those that insult their intelligence and threaten their livelihood and security. Honorable Nsereko should be cancelled in every way. Honorable Magogo should be cancelled, and the speaker, his wife, should also be cancelled. People should not wait for the ballot. Stop inviting them for your functions. Insult them. Annoy them. expose them for their undemocratic nature. Because if they get an ounce more power, if Museveni were to die today, and these crooks lead the country, they will be worse. In essence, this law actually was made to make Museveni look good, and probably to have the last laugh. He might lecture them on it, but I doubt it. He's grown too old. He too wants to eat his cake and have it as well.
Yes. Well, thank you so much, Councillor, for joining us this morning. And yes, I'm glad that you shared and gave so much insight in regards to the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill, and of course, you know, how you feel about it. So I was sitting down with Isaac Semakade, who is an advocate of the High Court of Uganda, and we did discuss the Computer Misuse Amendment Bill 2022 that was passed by Parliament last week and was actually tabled by Honorable Muhammad Nsereko, who is the Kampala Central Member of Parliament. So that's what we had for you this morning on our Twitter Jabs. Yes, the conversation continues on our social media platforms, that is Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at SEETV Uganda. Well, that's what we had for you, of course, in this particular episode of Sunrise at Sea. We'll be back tomorrow, same time, 7 a.m. to 9 a.m. And from me and the entire team right here at SEETV, we wish you an amazing day.